Question 1. Examination of the data shows that following a high-profile arrest in Austin, Texas, a citizen has submitted a formal request for the complete incident report. The report contains details that, if fully disclosed, could potentially compromise an ongoing related investigation and reveal the identities of individuals who have provided information to APD. What is the most appropriate and legally compliant method for the Austin Police Department to handle this request? Option A. The entire unredacted incident report is immediately provided to the citizen to ensure maximum transparency. Option B. The release of the incident report is indefinitely postponed until the related investigation is fully concluded, without providing any interim explanation. Option C. A designated supervisor or public information officer reviews the incident report to identify and redact any information exempt from public disclosure under Texas law before releasing the remaining portions. Option D. A brief, verbal summary of the incident is provided to the citizen, with no written documentation of the report's contents. Correct answer is C. A designated supervisor or public information officer reviews the incident report to identify and redact any information exempt from public disclosure under Texas law before releasing the remaining portions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining public trust and ensuring efficient departmental operations. The Austin Police Department, APD, operates under the Texas Local Government Code and APD's internal policies, which mandate transparency and accountability, while also requiring officers to exercise discretion in their duties. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the public's right to information with the need to protect sensitive investigative details that could compromise ongoing investigations or the safety of individuals involved. Careful judgment is required to determine what information is appropriate for public dissemination, without violating legal or ethical standards. The best approach involves a systematic review of the incident report by a designated supervisor or public information officer, PO, who is trained in APD's policies and relevant Texas public information laws. This individual would assess the report for information that is legally releasable under the Texas Public Information Act, such as basic facts of the incident, location, time, and any arrests made, while redacting or withholding information that is exempt from disclosure. Exemptions typically include details that could reveal the identity of confidential informants, ongoing investigative strategies, or information that, if released, would jeopardize the safety of victims, witnesses, or law enforcement personnel. This approach ensures compliance with legal obligations for transparency, while safeguarding the integrity of investigations and the safety of those involved. Aligning with APD's commitment to both accountability and effective law enforcement. Releasing the entire, unredacted incident report without review is professionally unacceptable because it violates APD's internal policies and potentially state law regarding the protection of sensitive investigative information. This could compromise ongoing investigations, endanger witnesses or informants, and lead to legal challenges against the department for improper disclosure. Providing only a brief verbal summary without any written documentation is also professionally unacceptable. While it might offer a superficial level of transparency, it lacks the detail and permanence required for public record and accountability. It also opens the door to misinterpretation and does not allow for a thorough, documented assessment of what information is legally releasable. Delaying the release of any information indefinitely without a clear legal basis for withholding it is professionally unacceptable. This approach erodes public trust and can lead to accusations of a cover-up or lack of transparency, violating the spirit of public information laws and APD's commitment to community engagement. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance, ethical considerations, and departmental policy. This involves understanding the specific requirements of the Texas Public Information Act, APD's internal guidelines on public records and media relations, and the ethical imperative to protect sensitive information. When faced with a request for information, the process should involve 1. Identifying the nature of the request and the specific records involved. 2. Consulting relevant policies and legal statutes. 3. Performing a thorough review of the records, applying appropriate redactions based on legal exemptions. 4. Documenting the decision-making process for any withheld information. 5. Communicating the released information clearly and accurately. Question 2. Research into a potential data breach affecting sensitive Austin Police Department APD records has surfaced. The APD Public Information Officer, PO, has just received an anonymous tip suggesting that a significant amount of citizen data may have been compromised. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the PIO to take in accordance with Texas law and professional policing standards? Option A. Attempt to conduct a discreet internal investigation to confirm the breach without notifying any external parties or departmental leadership to avoid unnecessary alarm. Option B. Immediately notify the APD chief and the city manager's office about the potential breach and begin drafting a preliminary public statement acknowledging the possibility of a breach and outlining investigative steps. Option C. Delay reporting the potential breach to departmental leadership and city officials until a full internal investigation can be completed to confirm the extent of the compromise. Option D. Immediately release a detailed public statement to the media, speculating on the nature of the data compromised and the potential perpetrators, to inform the public proactively. Correct answer is B. Immediately notify the APD chief and the city manager's office about the potential breach and begin drafting a preliminary public statement acknowledging the possibility of a breach and outlining investigative steps. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining public trust and ensuring efficient departmental operations, particularly when dealing with sensitive information that could impact community relations and officer safety. Careful judgment is required to balance transparency with the need for discretion. The best approach involves a proactive and transparent communication strategy. This entails the APD Public Information Officer, PO, immediately notifying the Austin Police Department chief and the city manager's office about the potential data breach. Simultaneously, the PIO should begin drafting a preliminary public statement, acknowledging the possibility of a breach and outlining the steps being taken to investigate and secure the data, without prematurely confirming details or speculating on the cause. This approach prioritizes immediate notification to relevant authorities and begins the process of controlled public disclosure, aligning with principles of accountability and public trust expected of law enforcement agencies in Texas. It allows for informed decision-making by leadership and prepares the department for potential public scrutiny. An incorrect approach would be to delay reporting the potential breach to departmental leadership and city officials. This failure to promptly inform superiors creates a significant ethical and professional lapse, as it prevents timely strategic decision-making and potentially hinders the department's ability to respond effectively. It also undermines the chain of command and can lead to a loss of public confidence if the breach is discovered through external channels. Another incorrect approach is to immediately release a detailed public statement without first informing departmental leadership or conducting a preliminary assessment. This premature disclosure, especially if it contains unverified information or speculates on the cause, can lead to misinformation, panic, and damage to the department's reputation. It bypasses necessary internal review processes and can compromise the ongoing investigation by revealing sensitive details prematurely. A further incorrect approach would be to attempt to conceal the potential breach and conduct an internal investigation without any external notification. This is a severe ethical and professional failing. Law enforcement agencies in Texas are held to a high standard of public accountability. Concealing a potential data breach erodes public trust, violates ethical obligations to inform stakeholders, and could have legal ramifications if the breach is discovered and the department is found to have withheld information. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes immediate notification of superiors and relevant stakeholders, followed by a controlled and accurate communication strategy. This framework involves assessing the severity of the situation, understanding the potential impact on public safety and trust, consulting with legal counsel and departmental leadership, and developing a communication plan that is both informative and responsible. Transparency, accountability, and adherence to departmental policy and Texas law should guide every step. Question 3. Which approach would be most appropriate for an Austin Police Department APD officer to take when, during a lawful traffic stop in Austin, Texas, they observe a suspicious, unmarked package partially visible in the passenger seat, and the driver appears nervous and evasive when questioned about it? Option A. Ignore the suspicious package and the driver's behavior. Issue a citation for any minor traffic violation observed. and allow the driver to proceed without further investigation. Option B. Secure the vehicle and its contents to prevent tampering or loss of evidence, and immediately initiate the process to obtain a search warrant based on the observed suspicious package and the driver's behavior, while ensuring the driver's rights are respected. Option C. Conduct a full warrantless search of the vehicle immediately, including the package, to determine its contents, given the suspicious nature of the item and the driver's demeanor. Option D. Seize the suspicious package without further justification or warrant, and then attempt to develop probable cause for its seizure after the fact. The correct answer is B. Secure the vehicle and its contents to prevent tampering or loss of evidence, and immediately initiate the process to obtain a search warrant based on the observed suspicious package and the driver's behavior, while ensuring the driver's rights are respected. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge for an Austin Police Department (APD) officer regarding the proper handling of evidence discovered during a lawful traffic stop. The core professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to secure potential evidence with the strict procedural requirements mandated by Texas law and APD policy to maintain the integrity of the investigation and protect constitutional rights. Failure to adhere to these protocols can lead to the suppression of evidence, damage to public trust, and disciplinary action. The best approach involves immediately securing the vehicle and its contents to prevent tampering or loss of evidence, while simultaneously initiating the process for obtaining a search warrant based on probable cause. This is correct because Texas Code of Criminal Procedure Article 18:01, which governs search warrants, and established Fourth Amendment principles, require a warrant for a full search of a vehicle, unless specific exceptions apply, like probable cause to believe contraband is present in exigent circumstances. APD policy, aligned with these legal frameworks, emphasizes the importance of probable cause and judicial authorization for searches beyond the scope of a lawful arrest or inventory search. By securing the vehicle and seeking a warrant, the officer upholds the constitutional rights of the individual while ensuring the evidence is legally obtained. An incorrect approach would be to conduct a warrantless search of the entire vehicle immediately upon observing the suspicious item, without further probable cause to believe other contraband exists or without exigent circumstances. This violates the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, as well as Texas law requiring warrants for searches beyond established exceptions. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the suspicious item and proceed with the traffic citation without documenting or securing it. This fails in the officer's duty to investigate potential criminal activity and preserve evidence, potentially compromising a future investigation. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to seize the item without probable cause and then attempt to justify the seizure later without a clear legal basis, undermining the principle of lawful seizure of evidence. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance and constitutional rights. This involves a thorough assessment of the situation to determine if probable cause exists for a search, whether any exceptions to the warrant requirement apply, and if securing the scene and obtaining a warrant is the most appropriate course of action. Documentation of all observations and actions is paramount. Question 4. Quality control measures reveal that a citizen has submitted a public information request to the Austin Police Department (APD) for records pertaining to a specific officer's conduct. APD is currently conducting an active internal affairs investigation into the same officer's alleged misconduct. What is the most appropriate and legally compliant course of action for the APD to take in response to this request, adhering to the Texas Public Information Act? Option A. Ignore the public information request until the internal investigation is fully concluded. Option B. Provide a general statement that the information is not available without specifying the reason or legal basis for withholding. Option C. Acknowledge the request promptly and inform the requester that the information is part of an active internal investigation, citing potential exemptions under the Texas Public Information Act. Option D. Release all requested records immediately to ensure full transparency and compliance with the Texas Public Information Act. Correct answer is C. Acknowledge the request promptly and inform the requester that the information is part of an active internal investigation, citing potential exemptions under the Texas Public Information Act. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the Austin Police Department's (APD) commitment to upholding the Texas Public Information Act, TPIA, while balancing the need for thorough internal investigations. The challenge lies in determining the appropriate scope and timing of information release when a public information request overlaps with an ongoing internal affairs investigation. Mismanagement of this situation could lead to violations of the TPIA, compromise the integrity of the internal investigation, and erode public trust in the APD. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing interests effectively. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves acknowledging the request promptly and informing the requester that the information is currently part of an active internal investigation, thus potentially exempt from immediate disclosure under specific provisions of the TPIA. This approach aligns with the TPIA allowance for withholding information that, if released, would interfere with law enforcement investigations or reveal confidential information related to internal disciplinary proceedings. By clearly communicating the status and the legal basis for potential withholding, the APD demonstrates transparency within the bounds of the law. This proactive communication manages expectations and upholds the department's commitment to both public access and investigative integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. Releasing the requested information immediately without considering the ongoing internal investigation would be a significant failure. This action could jeopardize the investigation by alerting involved parties, potentially leading to the destruction or alteration of evidence, and could violate TPIA exemptions related to ongoing law enforcement investigations. Failing to respond to the request at all constitutes another failure, as it directly contravenes the TPIA mandate for timely responses and can lead to penalties and public perception of obstruction. Providing a vague or misleading response, such as stating the information is unavailable without further clarification, is also professionally unacceptable. This approach lacks transparency and does not adequately inform the requester of the legal basis for any withholding, potentially leading to further disputes and a perception of evasion. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should first consult the specific provisions of the Texas Public Information Act and APD internal policies regarding the release of information during active investigations. They should then assess whether the requested information falls under any TPIA exemptions, particularly those pertaining to law enforcement investigations or internal disciplinary matters. A prompt, clear, and legally justified communication with the requester is paramount. If information is to be withheld, the specific exemption should be cited, and the requester should be informed of their right to seek a ruling from the Texas Attorney General. This systematic approach ensures compliance with legal obligations, protects the integrity of internal processes, and maintains public confidence. Question 5. Quality control measures reveal that an Austin Police Department officer, while responding to a disturbance call, observed a suspect fleeing the scene with an item that appeared to be stolen. The officer pursued the suspect but lost sight of them before apprehension. The officer's initial report, however, described the item as definitively stolen and the suspect as having been apprehended to expedite the case closure process. Which of the following approaches best reflects professional conduct and adherence to APD's reporting standards? Option A. Submit a report that definitively states the item was stolen and the suspect was apprehended, as this aligns with the initial strong suspicion and expedites case closure. Option B. Delay submitting the report until the suspect is apprehended and the item's status as stolen is unequivocally confirmed, even if this takes an extended period. Option C. Document all observed facts accurately, including the loss of sight of the suspect and the item's appearance, and clearly state that the item is believed to be stolen pending further investigation and confirmation. Option D. Include speculative details in the report about the suspect's likely destination and the item's intended use based on the officer's experience to provide a more complete picture. The correct answer is C. Document all observed facts accurately, including the loss of sight of the suspect and the item's appearance, and clearly state that the item is believed to be stolen pending further investigation and confirmation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining public trust and the need for efficient, effective law enforcement operations. The Austin Police Department, APD, operates under the Texas Local Government Code and departmental policies designed to ensure accountability and public confidence. Misrepresenting information, even with the intent to expedite a process, erodes this trust and can have legal ramifications. The pressure to close cases quickly must be balanced against the absolute requirement for factual accuracy in official reports. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves meticulously documenting all observed facts and evidence, even if it means a report is initially less conclusive or requires further investigation. This approach upholds the integrity of APD's reporting system, which is crucial for legal proceedings, internal reviews, and public transparency. Adhering strictly to factual reporting, as mandated by APD policy and general principles of law enforcement ethics, ensures that all actions are defensible and that the department operates within legal and ethical boundaries. This commitment to truthfulness is paramount in maintaining public trust and ensuring justice. Incorrect approaches analysis. Submitting a report that omits or downplays critical observations to fit a preconceived narrative or expedite closure is a direct violation of APD's duty to accurately represent events. This misrepresentation undermines the investigative process and can lead to wrongful conclusions or the overlooking of crucial evidence. It also violates the ethical obligation of officers to be truthful in all official statements. Including speculative or unconfirmed details in an official report, even if based on a strong suspicion, is unprofessional and can be legally problematic. Official reports must be based on verifiable facts and direct observations. Introducing speculation blurs the line between evidence and assumption, potentially misleading supervisors, prosecutors, and the courts. This deviates from the standard of factual reporting expected of APD officers. Delaying the submission of a report until all possible avenues of investigation are exhausted without proper justification or communication can hinder ongoing investigations and create operational inefficiencies. While thoroughness is important, an indefinite delay without cause is not a responsible approach. However, in this specific scenario, the primary failure is misrepresentation, not necessarily delay. The core issue is the integrity of the information presented. Professional reasoning. Law enforcement professionals must prioritize accuracy and integrity in all their documentation. When faced with situations where initial observations might not immediately lead to a clear-cut conclusion, the decision-making process should involve 1. Documenting all observed facts accurately and objectively. 2. Clearly identifying any gaps in information or areas requiring further investigation. 3. Communicating these findings and the need for further work to supervisors. And 4. Diligently pursuing additional evidence to support or refute initial observations, all while maintaining the factual basis of the official record. The principle of, if it's not documented, it didn't happen, underscores the critical importance of accurate and complete reporting. Question 6. Quality control measures reveal that a civilian employee has filed a formal complaint alleging that a police supervisor within the Austin Police Department, APD, engaged in a pattern of retaliatory behavior after the employee reported a minor procedural infraction. The civilian employee claims the supervisor has since assigned them undesirable shifts, excluded them from important departmental communications, and made disparaging remarks about their performance in front of colleagues. What is the most appropriate course of action for the APD to take in response to this complaint, adhering strictly to APD civil service rules and Texas state law? Option A. Advise the civilian employee that such complaints are often subjective and difficult to prove, suggesting they focus on their work performance. Option B. Immediately issue a written reprimand to the supervisor based on the seriousness of the allegations, pending further review. Option C. Arrange a private meeting between the civilian employee and the supervisor to facilitate a direct resolution and de-escalate the situation. Option D. Initiate a formal internal affairs investigation to thoroughly and impartially examine the allegations, gather evidence, and determine if APD policies or state laws have been violated. The correct answer is D. Initiate a formal internal affairs investigation to thoroughly and impartially examine the allegations, gather evidence, and determine if APD policies or state laws have been violated. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining public trust and ensuring efficient departmental operations. The Austin Police Department, APD, operates under strict civil service regulations and ethical guidelines designed to uphold fairness, transparency, and accountability. Misinterpreting or misapplying these regulations can lead to legal challenges, damage to public perception, and erosion of officer morale. The critical element here is understanding the proper procedure for addressing a complaint that involves potential policy violations by a supervisor, balancing the need for thorough investigation with the protection of all parties involved. Correct approach analysis. The best approach involves initiating a formal internal affairs investigation in accordance with APD civil service rules and Texas state law governing law enforcement conduct. This process requires a neutral and objective review of the allegations, gathering evidence, interviewing relevant parties, including the complainant, the supervisor, and any witnesses, and documenting all findings. This approach is correct because it adheres to established protocols for handling misconduct allegations, ensuring due process for the supervisor, protecting the integrity of the investigation, and providing a clear path for disciplinary action if warranted. It upholds the principles of accountability and fairness mandated by civil service regulations and the Texas Penal Code concerning official misconduct. Incorrect approaches analysis. Initiating an immediate disciplinary action against the supervisor without a formal investigation is procedurally flawed. This bypasses the due process rights of the supervisor, violates APD civil service rules regarding disciplinary procedures, and could lead to wrongful termination or other sanctions, exposing the department to legal liability. It demonstrates a failure to follow established investigative protocols and an assumption of guilt without evidence. Dismissing the complaint outright due to the complainant's perceived lack of credibility or the supervisor's rank is ethically and regulatorily unsound. APD civil service regulations require all complaints to be investigated, regardless of the complainant's status or the alleged offender's position. This approach undermines the complaint process, discourages future reporting of misconduct, and fails to uphold the department's commitment to integrity and accountability. It also risks allowing genuine policy violations to go unaddressed. Attempting to resolve the issue informally through a direct conversation with the supervisor without any documentation or formal process is insufficient. While informal resolution can be appropriate for minor issues, allegations of policy violations, especially those involving potential abuse of authority, necessitate a formal, documented investigation. This informal approach lacks transparency, accountability, and the necessary rigor to ensure a fair and just outcome, potentially violating APD's internal investigation policies and civil service guidelines. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should first identify the nature of the complaint and determine if it falls within the scope of APD civil service regulations and relevant Texas state laws. They must then consult the APD's Internal Affairs Policy and Procedures Manual to understand the mandated steps for investigation. The decision-making process should prioritize adherence to established protocols, ensuring fairness, objectivity, and thoroughness. This involves gathering all relevant facts, respecting the rights of all individuals involved, and documenting every step of the process. When in doubt, seeking guidance from supervisors or the Internal Affairs Division is crucial to ensure compliance and maintain professional integrity. Question 7. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a known suspect involved in a recent burglary in Austin, Texas, may be present at a private residence. The officer has a reasonable suspicion that the suspect is inside but no direct evidence of stolen property within the home. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Austin Police Department officer? Option A. Wait indefinitely for a warrant to be issued, even if it means the suspect might escape. Option B. Seek a search warrant based on probable cause before entering the private residence. Option C. Enter the private residence immediately to apprehend the suspect based on reasonable suspicion. Option D. Enter the private residence to secure the scene and prevent potential evidence destruction. The correct answer is B. Seek a search warrant based on probable cause before entering the private residence. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for an Austin Police Department, APD, officer due to the inherent tension between the need for timely information gathering during an active investigation and the constitutional rights of individuals. The APD operates under the framework of Texas state law and federal constitutional principles, particularly the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Balancing effective law enforcement with individual liberties requires careful judgment and adherence to established legal standards. The officer must consider the legality of the search, the potential for evidence preservation, and the rights of the individual involved. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves obtaining a warrant based on probable cause before conducting a search of a private residence. This approach aligns directly with the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, as interpreted by Texas courts and federal precedent. A warrant ensures that a neutral and detached magistrate has reviewed the evidence and determined that probable cause exists to believe that evidence of a crime will be found at the location. This process safeguards individual privacy and prevents arbitrary intrusions by law enforcement. Incorrect approaches analysis. Conducting a search of the private residence without a warrant, even with a reasonable suspicion that the suspect is present, violates the Fourth Amendment. Reasonable suspicion is the standard for a brief investigatory stop or pat-down, not for a full search of a home. This approach risks the suppression of any evidence found and could lead to civil liability for the officer and the department. Entering the residence to secure the scene without exigent circumstances is also problematic. While officers may enter a home without a warrant to prevent the destruction of evidence or to apprehend a fleeing felon, the mere suspicion that a suspect might be present does not automatically create exigent circumstances. The APD's policies and Texas law require a more immediate and pressing threat to justify such an entry. Delaying the investigation indefinitely until a warrant can be obtained, without any attempt to gather further information or assess the situation for exigent circumstances, could be professionally negligent if it allows evidence to be destroyed or a suspect to escape. However, in the absence of immediate threats, prioritizing the warrant process is the legally sound approach. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes constitutional rights and legal procedures. This involves 1. Identifying the legal standard applicable to the situation, e.g., probable cause for a search warrant, reasonable suspicion for a stop. 2. Assessing the specific facts and circumstances to determine if any exceptions to warrant requirements, like exigent circumstances, are met. 3. Consulting with supervisors or legal advisors when in doubt. 4. Adhering strictly to departmental policy and relevant laws. In this case, the default legal standard for searching a home is a warrant, and any deviation must be justified by clearly defined exceptions. Question 8. Quality control measures reveal that during a recent investigation in Austin, Texas, an officer observed a discarded item near a suspect's known residence. While the item was not directly linked to the suspect at that moment, the officer chose not to document its presence or condition in the official report, believing it was irrelevant to the immediate focus of apprehending the suspect. Which of the following approaches best reflects the required professional conduct for an Austin Police Department officer in this situation? Option A. Document the discarded item but omit details about its condition, such as signs of wear or damage, to streamline the report. Option B. Create a narrative in the report that suggests the item was found in a more accessible or pristine condition than it actually was to bolster the investigation's perceived thoroughness. Option C. Meticulously document the presence and condition of the discarded item in the official report, even if its immediate relevance is unclear. Option D. Omit the documentation of the discarded item from the report if it does not directly implicate the primary suspect at the time of discovery. The correct answer is C. Meticulously document the presence and condition of the discarded item in the official report, even if its immediate relevance is unclear. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining public trust and the need for efficient, effective law enforcement operations. The Austin Police Department, APD, operates under the Texas Local Government Code and specific APD policies, which mandate transparency and accountability. Misrepresenting information, even with the intent to expedite an investigation, erodes public confidence and can lead to legal and ethical repercussions. The pressure to close cases quickly must be balanced against the fundamental duty to report accurately and truthfully. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves accurately documenting all observations and findings, regardless of their immediate perceived importance to the investigation's outcome. This approach prioritizes integrity and adherence to APD's internal policies and the Texas Local Government Code's emphasis on accurate record-keeping. By meticulously documenting the presence of the discarded item and its condition, the officer upholds the principle of truthful reporting, which is foundational to all law enforcement activities and essential for maintaining public trust and ensuring the integrity of evidence. This ensures that all information, even seemingly minor details, is available for review and can be used in subsequent legal proceedings. Incorrect approach is analysis. Failing to document the discarded item because it was not immediately relevant to the primary suspect's direct involvement represents a failure in thoroughness and accurate record-keeping. This omission could lead to incomplete case files, potentially hindering future investigations or legal challenges if the item later becomes significant. It violates the principle of comprehensive documentation expected of APD officers. Documenting the item but omitting its condition, e.g., damaged, weathered, introduces a misrepresentation of facts. This is a direct ethical and regulatory violation, as it distorts the objective reality of the evidence. Such an omission can compromise the admissibility of the evidence in court and damage the credibility of the officer and the department. Creating a narrative that implies the item was found in a different location or condition than it actually was is a severe ethical breach and a violation of the Texas Local Government Code's requirements for accurate reporting. This constitutes falsification of records, which can have severe legal consequences for the officer and undermine the entire investigation. Professional reasoning. Law enforcement professionals must adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes accuracy, completeness, and ethical conduct above all else. This involves understanding that every detail, no matter how small, can have significance. When faced with a situation where expediency might tempt a deviation from strict accuracy, officers should ask themselves, does this action uphold the truth and maintain the integrity of the investigation and public trust? Adherence to departmental policies and relevant state laws, coupled with a commitment to objective reporting, forms the bedrock of professional policing. Question 9. Strategic planning requires the Austin Police Department, APD, to address a significant and ongoing shortage of patrol officers. Considering the APD's civil service regulations and the need for effective resource allocation, which of the following strategies would best balance immediate operational needs with long-term departmental health and compliance? Option A. Implement a comprehensive recruitment and retention initiative that includes targeted outreach, competitive incentives within civil service guidelines, and enhanced professional development opportunities for current officers. Option B. Expedite the hiring process by lowering the minimum qualifications for patrol officer candidates to quickly fill vacant positions. Option C. Mandate increased overtime for all patrol officers until the staffing shortage is resolved, regardless of individual officer capacity or potential for burnout. Option D. Temporarily reassign officers from specialized units to patrol duties to fill immediate gaps, without a clear plan for backfilling specialized unit responsibilities. The correct answer is A. Implement a comprehensive recruitment and retention initiative that includes targeted outreach, competitive incentives within civil service guidelines, and enhanced professional development opportunities for current officers. Explanation. Strategic planning requires careful consideration of how to best allocate limited resources to achieve departmental goals. In the context of the Austin Police Department APD Civil Service exam, this scenario presents a challenge in balancing immediate operational needs with long-term professional development and recruitment efforts. The core difficulty lies in identifying the most effective and compliant method for addressing a critical staffing shortage, while adhering to APD civil service regulations and ethical obligations. The best approach involves a multifaceted strategy that prioritizes compliance and strategic long-term impact. This approach focuses on leveraging existing civil service mechanisms for recruitment and retention, such as enhanced recruitment drives targeting specific demographics, offering competitive incentives within legal parameters, and investing in professional development programs for current officers to improve retention and internal promotion opportunities. This aligns with APD's commitment to fair and equitable hiring practices, ensuring a diverse and qualified applicant pool, and fostering a positive work environment that reduces turnover. It also directly addresses the staffing shortage by seeking to fill vacancies with qualified candidates and retain experienced officers. An approach that solely focuses on immediate overtime mandates for existing officers, while seemingly addressing the staffing gap, fails to consider the long-term consequences. This can lead to officer burnout, decreased morale, and increased risk of errors due to fatigue, potentially impacting public safety and departmental reputation. It also bypasses the structured civil service process for recruitment and may not be a sustainable solution. Another less effective approach would be to temporarily reassign officers from specialized units to patrol duties without adequate planning or consideration for the impact on those specialized units. This could compromise the effectiveness of critical specialized services, such as investigations or community outreach programs, and may not fully address the underlying recruitment issues. Finally, an approach that involves lowering hiring standards to fill vacancies quickly would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. APD's civil service system is designed to ensure that all officers meet rigorous standards for competence, integrity, and public trust. Compromising these standards would undermine the integrity of the department, erode public confidence, and potentially lead to the hiring of unqualified individuals, posing a risk to the community and the department. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the governing civil service regulations and departmental policies. This should be followed by an assessment of the root causes of the staffing shortage, considering both recruitment and retention factors. Subsequently, potential solutions should be evaluated based on their compliance with regulations, ethical implications, long-term sustainability, and impact on operational effectiveness and officer well-being. Question 10. Quality control measures reveal that overtime expenditures for patrol officers in the Austin Police Department's South Central Division have exceeded the allocated budget by 15% in the last fiscal quarter. The division captain is reviewing the overtime logs and needs to implement a strategy to bring expenditures back within budget for the upcoming quarter while maintaining adequate patrol coverage. Which of the following strategies best addresses this implementation challenge? Option A. Immediately implement a blanket policy of denying all overtime requests for patrol officers in the South Central Division for the next quarter, regardless of operational necessity, to force expenditures down. Option B. Conduct a detailed analysis of historical call data and projected event schedules for the South Central Division to forecast periods of high demand and proactively adjust patrol officer scheduling to minimize reliance on overtime, ensuring all overtime is pre-approved and justified based on critical operational needs. Option C. Focus solely on reducing the number of patrol officers on duty during non-peak hours to free up budget for overtime during anticipated high-demand periods, without analyzing the overall impact on response times. Option D. Approve all overtime requests submitted by patrol officers in the South Central Division, as long as they are signed by a supervisor, without further scrutiny, to avoid potential morale issues and ensure all shifts are covered. The correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed analysis of historical call data and projected event schedules for the South Central Division to forecast periods of high demand and proactively adjust patrol officer scheduling to minimize reliance on overtime, ensuring all overtime is pre-approved and justified based on critical operational needs. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge within the Austin Police Department, APD, related to resource allocation and overtime management, directly impacting operational efficiency and budget adherence. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for adequate staffing to meet public safety demands with the fiscal responsibility of managing overtime costs within budgetary constraints. Mismanagement can lead to decreased morale, burnout, and potential violations of APD's internal policies and Texas state regulations concerning public employee compensation and overtime. The best approach involves a proactive and data-driven method of forecasting staffing needs and managing overtime. This entails a thorough analysis of historical call data, projected event schedules, and known staffing shortages to anticipate periods of high demand. By utilizing this predictive analysis, supervisors can strategically schedule officers to minimize the need for overtime, thereby controlling costs and ensuring compliance with APD's overtime policies, which are designed to prevent excessive and unbudgeted expenditures. This method aligns with principles of sound financial management and operational planning, ensuring that resources are utilized effectively and in accordance with departmental directives and state budgetary laws. An incorrect approach would be to simply approve overtime requests, as they arise without a systematic review of the underlying need or potential for proactive scheduling. This reactive stance can lead to uncontrolled overtime expenditure, exceeding budgetary allocations and potentially violating APD's overtime approval protocols. Another incorrect approach is to deny all overtime requests outright, regardless of genuine operational necessity. This can lead to understaffing during critical periods, compromising public safety, and potentially violating the department's duty to provide adequate law enforcement services. Furthermore, failing to document the justification for overtime, even when approved, represents a significant procedural and ethical failure, hindering accountability and transparency. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes data analysis, adherence to policy, and fiscal responsibility. This involves 1. Understanding the operational context and staffing requirements. 2. Utilizing historical data and predictive analytics to forecast needs. 3. Consulting APD's overtime policies and relevant Texas statutes. 4. Approving overtime only when demonstrably necessary and adequately justified. 5. Maintaining meticulous records of all overtime requests and approvals. 6. Regularly reviewing overtime trends to identify areas for improvement in scheduling and resource allocation. Question 11. Benchmark analysis indicates that the Austin Police Department APD is considering a significant overhaul of its patrol deployment strategies to enhance efficiency, which approach best balances the need for operational improvements with maintaining public trust and officer morale within the Texas regulatory environment. Option A. Implement the new patrol deployment strategies immediately across all districts based on the initial analysis, with a follow-up memo to officers outlining the changes and their rationale. Option B. Introduce the revised patrol deployment strategies solely through an internal directive, focusing on the perceived benefits of increased officer availability without soliciting input from patrol officers or community representatives. Option C. Initiate a phased implementation of new patrol deployment strategies, beginning with pilot programs in select districts, accompanied by comprehensive communication plans for both internal staff and the Austin community, and incorporating feedback mechanisms throughout the process. Option D. Prioritize cost reduction targets in the new deployment strategy, making adjustments only if they directly impede essential public safety function, and communicate changes through official departmental channels. The correct answer is C. Initiate a phased implementation of new patrol deployment strategies, beginning with pilot programs in select districts, accompanied by comprehensive communication plans for both internal staff and the Austin community, and incorporating feedback mechanisms throughout the process. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for efficient resource allocation with the long-term implications of departmental reputation and public trust. The Austin Police Department, APD, operates under a strict framework of accountability and transparency, as mandated by Texas state law and APD internal policies. Mismanaging public perception through a poorly communicated process optimization can lead to decreased cooperation from the community, increased scrutiny from oversight bodies, and potential legal challenges. The pressure to demonstrate tangible improvements in service delivery must be weighed against the ethical imperative to involve stakeholders and ensure fairness. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a phased implementation that prioritizes clear and consistent communication with all affected parties, including sworn officers, civilian staff, and the public. This approach acknowledges that process optimization is not merely an internal administrative task, but a change that impacts service delivery and public interaction. By proactively engaging officers and the community through transparent channels, the APD can gather valuable feedback, address concerns before they escalate, and build support for the changes. This aligns with the APD's commitment to community policing principles and the Texas Government Code, which emphasizes efficient and effective public service delivery through responsible management. Transparency in operational changes fosters trust and legitimacy, which are critical for law enforcement effectiveness. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves implementing significant process changes without prior consultation or notification to the officers who will be directly affected. This disregards the practical expertise of frontline personnel, potentially leading to resistance, decreased morale, and the identification of unforeseen operational flaws only after implementation. Ethically, it fails to respect the contributions of sworn officers and can undermine their sense of agency. Legally, while not directly violating a specific statute in this context, it can indirectly lead to inefficiencies that contradict the spirit of effective public service mandated by Texas law. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on cost savings or efficiency metrics without considering the impact on the quality of service provided to the citizens of Austin. This narrow focus can lead to decisions that, while appearing efficient on paper, degrade response times, reduce community engagement, or compromise investigative thoroughness. Such an approach risks violating the APD's core mission of public safety and could lead to public dissatisfaction and a loss of confidence, which is detrimental to the department's operational effectiveness and its standing within the community. A third incorrect approach is to communicate the optimization process only through internal memos with limited opportunity for feedback or clarification. This creates a top-down, authoritarian perception of change, which can breed suspicion and resentment among staff. It fails to leverage the collective knowledge of the department and misses opportunities to refine the optimization plan based on practical insights. This lack of engagement is counterproductive to fostering a collaborative and adaptive organizational culture, which is essential for sustained process improvement and public trust. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a stakeholder-centric approach to process optimization. This involves identifying all parties affected by the proposed changes, understanding their perspectives and concerns, and actively involving them in the planning and implementation phases. A robust communication strategy that is transparent, consistent, and two-way is paramount. This framework ensures that optimizations are not only efficient, but also equitable, sustainable, and aligned with the organization's mission and public service obligations. Decision-making should be guided by a comprehensive assessment of potential impacts, not just on internal metrics, but also on service quality, public perception, and staff morale. Question 12. Governance review demonstrates that the Austin Police Department APD is considering optimizing its patrol resource allocation to enhance efficiency and effectiveness across the city. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of responsible governance and community trust for the APD in Austin, Texas? Option A. Prioritize increased patrol presence exclusively in the 5 Austin zip codes with the highest recorded property crime rates over the past year, assuming this will yield the greatest overall impact on public safety. Option B. Reallocate patrol units to the neighborhood that has most vocally expressed concerns about recent crime trends, based on media coverage and direct citizen complaints from that specific area. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive, data-driven analysis of current resource deployment, crime statistics, call for service data, and community feedback from all Austin neighborhoods to inform revised deployment strategies that demonstrably improve response times, crime prevention, and community engagement across the entire city, with particular attention to areas historically experiencing disparities. Option D. Implement resource adjustments based on the subjective observations and anecdotal reports from senior officers regarding perceived patrol needs in different districts, without formal data collection or community consultation. Correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive, data-driven analysis of current resource deployment, crime statistics, call for service data, and community feedback from all Austin neighborhoods to inform revised deployment strategies that demonstrably improve response times, crime prevention, and community engagement across the entire city, with particular attention to areas historically experiencing disparities. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for efficient resource allocation with the imperative to maintain public trust and ensure equitable service delivery. The Austin Police Department APD operates under the Texas Local Government Code and APD's internal policies, which mandate transparency, accountability, and fair treatment of all citizens. A decision to reallocate resources without a clear, justifiable rationale risks perceptions of bias, reduced effectiveness in underserved areas, and potential violations of departmental directives regarding community policing and resource deployment. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any process optimization aligns with legal mandates and ethical obligations. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a data-driven, community-informed approach to process optimization. This means conducting a thorough analysis of current resource deployment patterns, crime statistics, call for service data, and community feedback from all Austin neighborhoods. This analysis should then inform the development of revised deployment strategies that demonstrably improve response times, crime prevention, and community engagement across the entire city, with particular attention to areas historically experiencing disparities. This approach is correct because it adheres to the principles of good governance and accountability enshrined in Texas law, which emphasizes efficient and effective public service. It also aligns with APD's commitment to community policing, requiring officers to be responsive to the needs of all residents and to build trust through equitable service. The process must be transparent, allowing for public input and scrutiny, thereby reinforcing public confidence. Incorrect approach is analysis. Prioritizing resource reallocation based solely on the loudest public outcry from a specific neighborhood, without a comprehensive citywide analysis, is ethically flawed. This approach risks creating new disparities by neglecting other areas that may also require enhanced resources, potentially violating the principle of equitable service delivery mandated by departmental policy and public trust expectations. It also bypasses the systematic, data-driven approach required for effective governance. Implementing resource changes based on anecdotal evidence or personal observations of supervisors, without supporting data or community consultation, is professionally unacceptable. This method lacks the objectivity and rigor necessary for sound decision-making and can lead to misallocation of valuable resources, potentially impacting public safety and departmental effectiveness across Austin. It fails to meet the standards of accountability and evidence-based practice. Focusing resource optimization exclusively on areas with the highest reported crime rates, without considering the underlying causes or the needs of other communities, is an incomplete strategy. While crime rates are a crucial factor, a holistic approach must also consider factors like community engagement, preventative policing efforts, and the needs of areas with lower reported crime but significant community concerns. This narrow focus can lead to neglecting other vital aspects of public safety and community relations, potentially undermining the APD's broader mission. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with defining the problem and its scope. This is followed by gathering comprehensive data from all relevant sources, including statistical analysis and community input. Next, potential solutions are brainstormed and evaluated against established criteria, such as legal compliance, ethical considerations, effectiveness, and efficiency. The chosen solution is then implemented with clear communication and a plan for ongoing monitoring and evaluation. This iterative process ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and aligned with the department's mission and the public's best interests. Question 13. Operational review demonstrates that Austin Police Department APD community policing initiatives in Texas are experiencing challenges in effectively reaching all neighborhoods and addressing diverse community needs. To optimize these processes, which of the following actions would best align with a data-driven and efficient approach to improving resource allocation and program effectiveness? Option A. Shift all community policing responsibilities to a single specialized unit, assuming this will streamline operations and improve focus, without evaluating the impact on existing patrol officer community engagement. Option B. Reduce the budget allocated to community policing by 15% across the board to encourage officers to find more cost-effective ways to engage the community, regardless of the impact on service delivery. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive analysis of current community policing activities, utilizing performance metrics, crime data, and community feedback to identify areas of inefficiency and opportunities for strategic resource reallocation. Option D. Implement a new, high-profile community outreach program across all districts immediately, based on general public perception of need, without a detailed assessment of existing resource capacity or program impact. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive analysis of current community policing activities, utilizing performance metrics, crime data, and community feedback to identify areas of inefficiency and opportunities for strategic resource reallocation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for APD officers in Texas regarding the efficient allocation of resources for community policing initiatives. The challenge lies in balancing the need for proactive engagement with the practical constraints of staffing and operational demands, requiring a strategic approach to process optimization that aligns with departmental goals and public trust. Careful judgment is required to ensure that resource allocation decisions are data-driven, equitable, and contribute meaningfully to public safety and community relations within the framework of Texas law and APD policy. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a data-driven assessment of current community policing activities, identifying bottlenecks and inefficiencies through objective metrics and officer feedback. This approach is correct because it directly addresses process optimization by seeking to improve existing workflows. It aligns with the APD's mandate to serve the public effectively and efficiently, as outlined in departmental policies that emphasize responsible resource management and evidence-based policing strategies. By analyzing performance data and soliciting input from those on the front lines, the department can make informed decisions to streamline operations, reallocate resources where they are most needed, and enhance the overall impact of community policing efforts in Texas. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves solely relying on anecdotal evidence and officer preferences without objective data. This fails to provide a systematic basis for optimization, potentially leading to misallocation of resources based on subjective opinions rather than demonstrable needs or impacts. It risks neglecting areas where community engagement is most critical or where existing processes are demonstrably underperforming. Another incorrect approach is to implement broad, sweeping changes without pilot testing or phased implementation. This can disrupt established workflows, lead to confusion, and potentially create new inefficiencies. It bypasses the critical step of evaluating the effectiveness of proposed changes in a controlled manner, which is essential for successful process optimization and adherence to APD operational guidelines. A further incorrect approach is to focus solely on reducing costs without considering the impact on service delivery and community relations. While fiscal responsibility is important, process optimization in law enforcement must prioritize effectiveness in achieving public safety and community trust. A purely cost-cutting approach can undermine the very goals of community policing and may not be sustainable or ethically sound within the context of APD's mission in Texas. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with clearly defining the objectives of process optimization. This involves gathering relevant data, analyzing current processes, identifying areas for improvement, developing potential solutions, and implementing and evaluating those solutions. Collaboration with stakeholders, including officers and community members, is crucial. Adherence to departmental policies, ethical considerations, and legal frameworks, such as those governing law enforcement in Texas, must guide every step of the optimization process. Question 14. The performance metrics show a concerning trend of increasing average response times for emergency calls within the Austin Police Department. Considering the need for efficient and effective public safety service delivery, which of the following strategies would best address this issue while adhering to principles of responsible resource management and operational integrity? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of current dispatch protocols, patrol deployment patterns, and call prioritization systems, involving frontline officers and supervisors in identifying bottlenecks and proposing data-informed solutions for process optimization. Option B. Implement a blanket policy requiring all officers to respond to every call regardless of priority, aiming to reduce the overall number of calls waiting in the system. Option C. Focus solely on acquiring new technology for faster dispatch, without re-evaluating the underlying operational workflows and resource allocation strategies. Option D. Immediately increase the number of patrol units deployed during peak hours based on general observations of traffic congestion, without a detailed analysis of call types or geographic distribution. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive review of current dispatch protocols, patrol deployment patterns, and call prioritization systems, involving frontline officers and supervisors in identifying bottlenecks and proposing data-informed solutions for process optimization. Explanation. The performance metrics show a significant increase in response times for emergency calls within the Austin Police Department, APD. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts public safety and the APD's ability to fulfill its core mission. Officers and supervisors must balance operational demands with the need for efficient and effective service delivery. Careful judgment is required to identify the root causes of delays and implement sustainable solutions without compromising officer safety or investigative integrity. The best approach involves a data-driven, collaborative review of existing protocols and resource allocation. This entails analyzing call data, patrol patterns, and officer deployment strategies to pinpoint bottlenecks. Engaging frontline officers and supervisors in this process is crucial, as they possess invaluable on-the-ground insights into operational realities. This collaborative method aligns with the APD's commitment to continuous improvement and accountability, ensuring that any implemented changes are practical and address the actual issues affecting response times. This proactive and inclusive strategy fosters trust and buy-in, leading to more effective and lasting process optimization. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on anecdotal evidence or implement broad, unexamined changes to staffing levels without a thorough analysis of call volume, geographic distribution, and the nature of calls. This could lead to misallocation of resources, increased overtime costs, and potentially exacerbate existing issues if the underlying causes are not understood. It fails to adhere to principles of efficient resource management and evidence-based decision-making, which are implicit in maintaining a high-performing public service agency. Another incorrect approach would be to focus exclusively on increasing the number of officers on patrol without considering how they are deployed or managed. This more is better mentality ignores the complexities of dispatch, traffic conditions, and the specific needs of different patrol areas within Austin. Without a strategic deployment plan informed by data, simply adding more officers may not translate into faster response times and could lead to inefficient use of taxpayer funds. This approach lacks the analytical rigor necessary for effective process optimization. Finally, implementing changes based on pressure from external stakeholders without conducting an internal review would be a flawed strategy. While community feedback is important, operational decisions must be grounded in an understanding of the APD's internal processes and capabilities. Decisions made under external pressure without internal validation risk being superficial, ineffective, or even detrimental to the department's operational efficiency and the safety of its officers and the public. Professionals should employ a structured problem-solving framework. This begins with clearly defining the problem, increased response times, and gathering relevant data. Next, they should analyze the data to identify root causes, involving those directly affected by the processes. Based on this analysis, potential solutions should be developed and evaluated for feasibility and impact. Finally, the chosen solution should be implemented, monitored, and adjusted as needed, ensuring a continuous cycle of improvement. Question 15. Operational review demonstrates a need to optimize APD's dispatch protocol to improve response times across Austin. A new protocol has been proposed, but its potential impact on different neighborhoods and call types is not fully understood. Which approach best ensures the effective and equitable implementation of this new protocol? Option A. Immediately implement the new dispatch protocol across the entire city, relying on dispatchers' initial feedback to make rapid adjustments as needed. Option B. Implement the new dispatch protocol and focus solely on overall citywide average response time improvements, without specific analysis of neighborhood-level disparities. Option C. Implement the new dispatch protocol citywide after a thorough pilot program in a representative district, coupled with continuous data collection and analysis of response times across all Austin areas. Option D. Roll out the new dispatch protocol gradually, prioritizing areas with the highest reported crime rates and only collecting data if significant issues arise. The correct answer is C. Implement the new dispatch protocol citywide after a thorough pilot program in a representative district, coupled with continuous data collection and analysis of response times across all Austin areas. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for APD officers regarding the efficient allocation of resources and the potential for bias in response times. The critical need is to ensure equitable and effective service delivery across all Austin neighborhoods, adhering to APD's commitment to public safety and fairness. Misjudging the impact of a new dispatch protocol could lead to disparities in response times, potentially affecting community trust and operational effectiveness. Careful judgment is required to balance efficiency gains with the imperative of unbiased service. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a data-driven, phased implementation and continuous monitoring of the new dispatch protocol. This approach prioritizes objective evaluation of the protocol's impact on response times across different geographic areas and demographic groups within Austin. By collecting and analyzing data before, during, and after implementation, APD can identify any unintended consequences, such as increased response times in certain neighborhoods or for specific types of calls. This aligns with APD's commitment to operational excellence and equitable service delivery, ensuring that the pursuit of efficiency does not compromise fairness or public safety. This proactive and analytical method allows for informed adjustments to optimize the protocol and mitigate potential negative impacts, thereby upholding the department's duty to all Austin residents. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the new dispatch protocol without a pilot phase or comprehensive data collection would be a significant failure. This approach risks introducing or exacerbating disparities in response times without a clear understanding of the impact, potentially violating the principle of equitable service delivery to all Austin communities. Relying solely on anecdotal feedback from dispatchers without objective data is also professionally unsound. Anecdotal evidence can be subjective and prone to bias, failing to provide a true picture of the protocol's effectiveness across the entire city. This could lead to decisions based on incomplete or skewed information, undermining the integrity of the process. Making immediate, sweeping changes to the protocol based on initial, unverified reports without thorough analysis demonstrates a lack of due diligence. This reactive approach can lead to further disruptions and may not address the root cause of any identified issues, potentially creating more problems than it solves, and failing to optimize resource allocation effectively. Professional reasoning. Professionals in law enforcement, like APD officers, should employ a systematic and evidence-based decision-making process. This involves clearly defining objectives, identifying potential impacts, developing a plan for implementation and evaluation, and continuously monitoring outcomes. When introducing new operational procedures, a pilot program followed by rigorous data analysis is crucial. This allows for iterative improvements and ensures that changes are beneficial and equitable. Professionals must be prepared to adapt their strategies based on objective findings, always prioritizing the public good and adherence to departmental policies and ethical standards. Question 16. Process analysis reveals that the Austin Police Department APD is considering several strategies to optimize patrol car deployment and response times across the city. Which of the following approaches best aligns with APD's commitment to equitable service delivery and constitutional policing principles within Texas? Option A. Adopting a new dispatch and patrol management software system that promises significant efficiency gains, without a comprehensive review of its potential impact on equitable service delivery across Austin's diverse communities. Option B. Implementing optimizations solely based on reducing average response times across the entire city, without specific consideration for how these reductions are distributed geographically. Option C. Analyzing patrol patterns and response times to ensure fair and equitable service across all Austin neighborhoods, and evaluating proposed optimizations against departmental policies on constitutional policing and community relations. Option D. Focusing optimization efforts exclusively on areas with the highest reported crime statistics to maximize immediate impact on crime reduction. The correct answer is C. Analyzing patrol patterns and response times to ensure fair and equitable service across all Austin neighborhoods, and evaluating proposed optimizations against departmental policies on constitutional policing and community relations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for efficient resource allocation with the fundamental rights and well-being of citizens interacting with law enforcement. The Austin Police Department, APD, operates under the Texas Government Code and APD's internal policies, which mandate fair and equitable treatment of all individuals. Misinterpreting or misapplying process optimization principles can lead to discriminatory practices, erosion of public trust, and potential legal repercussions. Careful judgment is required to ensure that efficiency gains do not come at the expense of constitutional rights or departmental integrity. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a data-driven approach that prioritizes equitable outcomes and community engagement. This means analyzing patrol patterns and response times not just for speed, but also for fairness across different neighborhoods and demographic groups within Austin. Any proposed optimization must be evaluated against APD's commitment to constitutional policing and community relations, as outlined in Departmental General Orders and the Texas Bill of Rights. This approach ensures that efficiency improvements do not inadvertently lead to over-policing in certain areas or underserving others, thereby upholding the department's duty to protect and serve all residents of Austin impartially. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing optimizations solely based on reducing average response times without considering the distribution of those times across all Austin neighborhoods is professionally unacceptable. This approach risks creating disparities in police presence and service, potentially leading to accusations of profiling or neglect, which violates the principle of equal protection under the law and APD's commitment to unbiased policing. Focusing optimization efforts exclusively on areas with the highest reported crime statistics, while seemingly logical for resource allocation, can be professionally flawed if it leads to a disproportionate and sustained police presence in those specific communities, without corresponding community engagement or de-escalation strategies. This can create an environment of constant surveillance and potentially increase tensions, failing to address the root causes of crime and undermining community trust, which is a cornerstone of effective policing in Austin. Adopting a new software system for dispatch and patrol management without thorough testing and validation for its impact on equitable service delivery across all of Austin's diverse communities is also professionally unsound. If the system's algorithms or data inputs are biased, or if its implementation does not account for the unique needs of different neighborhoods, it could perpetuate or even exacerbate existing inequalities in police response and attention, contravening APD's ethical obligations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the objectives of process optimization, ensuring they align with departmental mission, values, and legal obligations. This involves gathering comprehensive data, analyzing it for potential biases or disparate impacts, and engaging stakeholders, including community members, in the process. Solutions should be pilot-tested and continuously monitored for effectiveness and fairness. When faced with choices, the option that best upholds constitutional rights, promotes equitable service delivery, and fosters community trust should always be prioritized, even if it means a less dramatic or immediate efficiency gain. Question 17. Operational review demonstrates a perceived increase in response times for certain types of calls within the Austin Police Department, APD. To address this, which of the following approaches best aligns with principles of process optimization and departmental policy? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive analysis of current dispatch and patrol patterns, collect data on call volume and response times across different sectors, and develop data-driven recommendations for procedural adjustments or resource reallocation. Option B. Immediately reassign officers from administrative duties and specialized units to bolster patrol presence in areas experiencing the longest response times. Option C. Implement a new, unproven real-time location tracking system for all patrol vehicles based on a recommendation from a single precinct captain. Option D. Convene a meeting with the longest-serving patrol officers to solicit their opinions on the primary causes of the delays and implement their most frequently suggested solutions. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive analysis of current dispatch and patrol patterns, collect data on call volume and response times across different sectors, and develop data-driven recommendations for procedural adjustments or resource reallocation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for efficient resource allocation with the long-term implications of potentially compromising established procedures. The pressure to respond quickly to a perceived surge in demand can lead to shortcuts that might violate departmental policies or ethical standards, potentially impacting service quality, accountability, and officer morale. Careful judgment is required to identify sustainable solutions rather than reactive measures. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a systematic, data-driven approach to process optimization. This means thoroughly analyzing the current workflow, identifying bottlenecks and inefficiencies through objective observation and data collection, and then developing and piloting proposed changes. This approach is correct because it aligns with the principles of good governance and operational management, ensuring that any changes are evidence-based and have a higher likelihood of achieving desired outcomes without unintended negative consequences. It respects the established procedural framework of the Austin Police Department, APD, by seeking to improve it through deliberate analysis rather than ad hoc adjustments. This methodical process also allows for proper evaluation and stakeholder buy-in, ensuring compliance with APD policies and civil service regulations that govern operational changes and resource management. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately reassigning officers from less critical units to address the perceived surge without a thorough analysis of the underlying causes or the impact on those units. This is professionally unacceptable because it is a reactive measure that bypasses the necessary diagnostic steps. It risks depleting essential services in other areas, potentially creating new problems, and may not address the root cause of the surge, leading to a temporary fix rather than a sustainable solution. This approach fails to adhere to APD's operational planning and resource allocation protocols, which typically require justification and impact assessments for significant shifts in personnel. Another incorrect approach is to implement new, unproven technologies or procedures based solely on anecdotal evidence or a desire for rapid change, without pilot testing or proper training. This is professionally unacceptable as it introduces significant risk. Unvetted changes can lead to confusion, errors, decreased efficiency, and potential safety issues for officers and the public. It disregards the APD's established procurement and implementation processes, which are designed to ensure that new tools and methods are effective, reliable, and compliant with relevant regulations and standards. A third incorrect approach involves solely relying on the input of a few senior officers for solutions without broader consultation or data analysis. While experienced officers offer valuable insights, this method is professionally unacceptable because it can lead to biased solutions that do not reflect the full operational picture or the experiences of all affected personnel. It bypasses the objective data collection and analysis necessary for true process optimization, and may overlook systemic issues or more effective solutions that emerge from a wider review. This approach fails to uphold the principles of fairness and comprehensive evaluation mandated by civil service principles and APD operational guidelines. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured problem-solving framework. This begins with clearly defining the problem or opportunity for improvement. Next, gather objective data and analyze the current state to understand root causes and identify specific areas for optimization. Then, brainstorm and evaluate potential solutions, considering feasibility, impact, and alignment with regulations and policies. Develop a plan for implementation, including pilot testing and training where appropriate. Finally, monitor the results, evaluate the effectiveness of the changes, and make further adjustments as needed. This iterative process ensures that improvements are data-driven, sustainable, and compliant. Question 18. The audit findings indicate a discrepancy in the documentation of a citizen complaint filed against an APD officer, specifically regarding the timely completion of initial intake procedures and the thoroughness of the final investigative report. Which of the following actions best addresses this finding in accordance with Austin Police Department policies and relevant Texas regulations? Option A. Close the audit finding by accepting the investigator's verbal confirmation that the complaint was investigated and resolved to their satisfaction, without further review of the official file. Option B. Advise the auditor that the complaint was handled informally by the supervising officer and that no formal documentation beyond a brief internal note exists, as the matter was resolved quickly. Option C. Initiate a formal review of the complaint file to verify the completion of all required intake steps, confirm the investigation followed APD standard operating procedures, and ensure all findings and evidence are accurately and completely documented, cross-referencing with Texas Government Code, Chapter 552, for record-keeping requirements. Option D. Recommend that the complaint file be amended to reflect the supervisor's informal resolution, omitting any details that might suggest procedural delays or incomplete documentation. The correct answer is C. Initiate a formal review of the complaint file to verify the completion of all required intake steps, confirm the investigation followed APD standard operating procedures, and ensure all findings and evidence are accurately and completely documented, cross-referencing with Texas Government Code, Chapter 552, for record-keeping requirements. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential lapse in procedural adherence within the Austin Police Department, APD, regarding the handling of citizen complaints. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the imperative of thorough investigation with the need for timely and accurate record-keeping, all while maintaining public trust and adhering to APD's internal policies and Texas state law governing law enforcement conduct and public information. The integrity of the complaint process is paramount to accountability and community relations. The best approach involves a systematic and documented review of the complaint's life cycle. This entails verifying that all required initial steps, such as the formal intake, assignment to an investigator, and notification to the complainant, were completed within the established APD timelines. Crucially, it requires confirming that the investigation itself was conducted according to APD's Standard Operating Procedures, SOP, and that all findings, evidence, and conclusions are meticulously documented in the official complaint file. This thoroughness ensures compliance with APD's internal regulations and Texas Government Code, Chapter 552, Public Information Act, which mandates proper record-keeping and public access to non-exempt information, while also upholding the principles of due process for all parties involved. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the complaint based on a perceived lack of immediate impact, or to rely solely on the investigator's verbal assurance that the matter was handled. This fails to establish a verifiable record, potentially violating APD SOPs and Texas law regarding documentation and transparency. Another incorrect approach is to prematurely close the file without confirming the completion of all investigative steps and the proper documentation of findings. This risks overlooking procedural errors or substantive issues, undermining the complaint resolution process, and potentially exposing the APD to legal challenges or public criticism. Finally, attempting to retroactively alter or omit details from the complaint file to align with audit expectations would be a severe ethical and legal violation, constituting obstruction and falsification of records, which is strictly prohibited by APD policy and Texas law. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established protocols, meticulous documentation, and transparency. When faced with audit findings, the first step is to gather all relevant documentation and compare it against established procedures and legal requirements. If discrepancies are found, the focus should be on understanding the root cause of the deviation and implementing corrective actions that reinforce procedural integrity and accurate record keeping, rather than attempting to obscure or minimize the issue. Question 19. The monitoring system demonstrates an unusual pattern in the storage duration of video footage from a public park surveillance camera in Austin, Texas, exceeding the standard retention period outlined in APD's General Order 307, Video Surveillance and Retention. An officer notices this anomaly during a routine system check. What is the most appropriate initial course of action for the officer to take? Option A. Document the anomaly and initiate an internal review process to compare the system's actual retention period against APD's General Order 307 and report findings to their supervisor. Option B. Instruct the IT department to immediately purge all footage exceeding the standard retention period to comply with the policy. Option C. Immediately contact the Austin City Attorney's Office to report a potential violation of APD's General Order 307. Option D. Assume the system is functioning correctly and that the extended retention is due to a system update or a specific operational need not immediately apparent. The correct answer is A. Document the anomaly and initiate an internal review process to compare the system's actual retention period against APD's General Order 307 and report findings to their supervisor. Explanation. The monitoring system demonstrates a potential lapse in adherence to the Austin Police Department's APD established policies and procedures regarding the handling of sensitive information, specifically concerning the privacy of individuals captured by surveillance technology. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the department's mandate for public safety and crime prevention with the fundamental rights of citizens to privacy and due process. A misstep can lead to significant legal repercussions, erosion of public trust, and internal disciplinary action. The best professional approach involves a proactive and transparent response that prioritizes policy adherence and accountability. This means immediately reviewing the system's data retention protocols against APD's official policy, identifying any discrepancies, and initiating a formal review process. This approach ensures that any potential policy violations are addressed systematically and that corrective actions are taken based on established departmental guidelines. It aligns with the ethical obligation to uphold departmental standards and protect citizen rights by ensuring technology is used within legal and policy boundaries. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the observation without further investigation, assuming the system is functioning as intended. This fails to acknowledge the potential for technological malfunction or unauthorized access, thereby neglecting the duty to ensure compliance with APD policies. It also overlooks the ethical imperative to safeguard citizen privacy and avoid potential misuse of surveillance data. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately escalate the issue to external legal counsel without an internal review. While legal consultation is important, bypassing the internal policy review process first can be inefficient and may lead to unnecessary external involvement. It suggests a lack of confidence in internal review mechanisms and can create an adversarial perception before the facts are fully understood internally. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to instruct the IT department to simply delete any potentially problematic data without a proper investigation or documentation. This action could be construed as an attempt to conceal a policy violation or evidence of misconduct, which is a serious ethical and potentially legal failing. It undermines the principles of accountability and transparency that are critical for maintaining public trust and ensuring lawful operations. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the relevant policies and procedures. When an anomaly is detected, the first step should be to gather information and assess the situation against these established guidelines. If a discrepancy is found, a structured internal review process should be initiated, followed by appropriate corrective actions. Transparency, accountability, and adherence to policy should guide every step. Question 20. The control framework reveals that Officer Miller of the Austin Police Department, APD, worked 10 hours of approved overtime last week. Officer Miller's regular hourly rate of pay is $25.00. According to APD's overtime policy and Texas labor law, approved overtime hours are compensated at 1.5 times the regular hourly rate. What is the total overtime pay Officer Miller is entitled to for these 10 hours? Option A, $250.00. Option B, $375.00. Option C, $300.00. Option D, $325.00. Correct answer is B, $375.00. Explanation. The control framework reveals a scenario where a police officer's overtime pay calculation is critical for accurate departmental budgeting and individual compensation, directly impacting the Austin Police Department's APD financial integrity and employee morale. This situation is professionally challenging because it requires meticulous attention to detail, a thorough understanding of APD's internal policies and Texas labor laws regarding overtime, and the ability to apply mathematical principles accurately. Errors in overtime calculation can lead to underpayment or overpayment, both of which have significant consequences, including potential legal disputes, audits, and damage to the department's reputation. The best approach involves a precise calculation of overtime hours based on the officer's regular hourly rate and the applicable overtime rate, ensuring all approved overtime is accounted for and correctly multiplied. This method is correct because it adheres strictly to the established pay scales and Texas labor regulations, which mandate specific overtime compensation for hours worked beyond the standard workweek. By using the officer's base hourly wage and multiplying it by 1.5 for all approved overtime hours, the calculation ensures compliance with fair labor practices and APD's internal financial policies, providing a transparent and accurate representation of compensation owed. An incorrect approach would be to estimate overtime pay based on a general understanding of typical overtime hours, or to simply round up the total hours worked without verifying individual overtime approvals. Estimating overtime pay is professionally unacceptable because it introduces a high degree of subjectivity and is prone to significant inaccuracies, failing to meet the APD's requirement for precise financial record keeping. This method bypasses the necessary verification of approved overtime and the application of the correct multiplier, potentially leading to underpayment and violating labor laws. Another incorrect approach would be to use the officer's base hourly rate for all overtime hours. This is ethically and legally flawed as it directly contravenes Texas labor laws and APD's policy, which clearly stipulate a higher rate for overtime. This failure to apply the correct overtime multiplier constitutes a direct violation of compensation regulations and can result in significant financial penalties and legal repercussions for the department. Professionals should employ a systematic decision-making process that begins with clearly identifying the relevant policies and regulations. This involves consulting APD's overtime policy and relevant sections of the Texas Labor Code. Next, gather all necessary data, including the officer's regular hourly rate and a verified log of approved overtime hours. Then, apply the correct mathematical formula for overtime calculation, ensuring accuracy at each step. Finally, review and double-check the calculation to prevent errors before submitting it for processing.